The future of fakes, deepfakes, and the next digital challenge. Since we're talking about the future, I have to use my usual line and say hello from the future to most of you, as it's already 2 a.m. on October the 30th here in Australia, where I'm presenting from today. All jokes aside, thank you for making the time to join us for this webinar. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. If there are any audio issues, please try dialing in using the numbers provided in your invitation. Also, feel free to submit your questions live in the chat during our presentation. We'll answer them in the Q&A session at the end, or our team will address them as we go. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending out the link over the next few days. Let me start with a short introduction. My name is Henry Pattishman. I'm Executive VP of Identity Verification Solutions at Regula. Today, I have the pleasure of presenting some insights on how deepfakes are impacting businesses. This data is from our latest study, and I will also compare it to a similar study that we conducted just a couple of years ago. The focus of today will be the rise of deepfakes. I will share market insight from Regula's latest research and what measures we can use to combat deepfake fraud in identity verification. In 2022, we surveyed companies across various sectors on the state of identity verification. The results showed that deepfakes were becoming an emerging threat. As identity verification is a crucial gateway for online businesses, companies that requested photos of customers and their IDs for verification found themselves facing new challenges. To further explore this issue, we launched another survey focused specifically on the threat of deepfakes. Conducted by Sapio Research in August 2024, the online survey collected responses from 575 business decision makers in financial services, crypto, technology, telecommunications, aviation, healthcare, and law enforcement. Respondents were based in Germany, Mexico, the UAE, the USA, and Singapore. The key takeaway from this is that deepfakes have become a major threat for many companies. Let me show you something. This is one of the popular threads on Reddit. Look at this. Looks real, right? But it's not. AI made this. Our eyes can't tell the difference anymore. Let's be honest. AI and deepfakes are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. The question isn't how to stop it, it's how to deal with it. Another interesting question is, how well can humans and businesses detect deepfakes? Well, according to several market studies, when it comes to high-quality deepfake videos, humans only get it right 1 out of 4 times. That's a 25% success rate. That's pretty poor. For artificially generated speech, it's a little bit better. People can identify it 3 out of 4 times. Though I think this would vary significantly depending on the language. For deepfake images of faces, the average detection accuracy is actually pretty high. It's around 62%. I think it would be much smaller for other, more generic images. Facial features are more recognizable and consistent, making it easier to identify subtle anomalies, while general images vary widely in content and context, complicating detection efforts. Actually, I did an experiment with a deepfake video of myself recently, and I'll tell you about it a little later during this presentation. Let's see how the situation changed since our previous Regula survey. Comparing it to 2 years ago and now, the threat of experiencing video deepfake has nearly doubled in size, from 29% to 50% of all companies facing these threats. The top concern for businesses related to deepfakes is identity theft. Over 40% of all leaders believe the biggest risk posed by these technologies is their role in facilitating identity theft. This makes sense, as identity is central to a wide range of potential threats. With just a bit of real data, fraudsters can exploit synthetic identities or create convincing deepfakes to bypass defenses. For example, sophisticated deepfakes can be used to bypass biometric security systems. They are no longer just experiments in video or audio manipulation. They've become a growing concern for businesses. Companies may need to rethink their reliance on traditional cybersecurity measures, as identity fraud now stands alongside data breaches and phishing attacks as a major threat. Let's take a closer look at the deepfake findings. Businesses in Singapore, the UAE, and the USA detect the highest number of deepfakes, while companies in Mexico report the fewest cases of this type of fraud. However, fewer cases still mean broad coverage, with almost a third of companies detecting these threats. With over 40% of companies experiencing deepfakes, this type of fraud has infiltrated nearly every sector. As shown in the slide, law enforcement, technology, fintech, and aviation are particularly affected, with only slight variations between audio and video deepfakes. We at Regula have also observed this firsthand, with the rising requests from our customers for the technologies to protect from deepfakes. Despite this growing threat, synthetic identity fraud, where real and fake data are combined to create new identities, and fake or altered physical ID documents, are still highly prevalent. What's more, these forms of fraud demonstrate an increase from 49% in 2022 to 58% in 2024 for fake IDs, and from 46% to 47% for synthetic identities. This makes sense, as documents remain the primary source for identity verification for processes such as customer onboarding, KYC, travel, and more. A positive finding is that the majority of decision makers are at least aware of this risk. Globally, 70% of decision makers rightly believe that document fraud poses a meaningful threat to their business. But awareness of the issue does vary from country to country. Fake or altered documents are the most common form of identity fraud worldwide, except in Singapore, where audio deepfakes lead the charge. As you can see, fake IDs are particularly prevalent in Mexico, the UAE, Germany, and the USA, with 70% of Mexican businesses facing this threat. Synthetic ID fraud is becoming widespread. Once a major threat to mostly US companies, primarily in the banking sector, it is now having global effects, particularly in the UAE and Mexico. The most targeted sectors include financial services, crypto, aviation, and technology. These sectors are tech-savvy, with a large percentage of their interactions with customers happening online. For financial services and law enforcement agencies, counterfeit IDs remain a persistent challenge. 66% in each experience fake or modified IDs. And this high number is expected, as these industries deal with money and our access to public services. The fintech industry stands out in the deepfake battle. According to our survey, it has one of the largest shares of companies with significant financial losses. Additionally, respondents in this sector also view synthetic identities as a major threat and closely associate deepfake-related costs with reputational risks. This is particularly alarming, as over half of fintech businesses have already encountered audio or video deepfakes. In a recent Gartner publication, they reported that usually fraudsters use deepfakes in two distinct types of attacks. One is against systems, that is, automated identity verification and biometric authentication processes using face or voice. Such processes are often used in user onboarding or to secure access to accounts and applications. And the other is against individuals, usually impersonation, typically of executives, on audio or video calls with the goal of socially engineering an employee to carry out an action such as a funds transfer. Here are two real cases of recent video and audio attacks. The first story of how a Hong Kong company fell victim to one of the largest deepfake scams in 2023 is still being talked about today. The scammers used a fake video conference, posing as executives, to convince an employee to transfer over $25 million to fraudulent accounts. In another case, a German energy company lost 220,000 euros when an executive received a phone call imitating the CEO's voice. In this case, the manipulation of the audio alone was enough to trigger a large financial transfer. Imagine how easy it is to fall for such scams when both video and audio are combined, as in this Hong Kong example. How well equipped is your company to prevent such an attack? Something to really think about. However, as significant as the financial costs are, the larger issue for most businesses is reputational risk, cited as the top threat. In some industries, such as telecoms at 51% and financial services at 44%, the numbers are even higher. Other key costs of deepfakes include business disruption, especially for technology, aviation, and financial services, penalties and fines, notable for financial services and telecoms, and loss of current or potential clients, a major concern for aviation and technology companies. We live in an era where deepfakes are no longer just a topic of interest. They are a serious threat. The use of sophisticated AI to create highly realistic fake audio, video, and documents is on the rise. And this trend is disrupting identity verification processes across industries. Companies' losses are not comparable to fraudsters' costs. For example, scammers can generate a convincing fake ID using photo or video generators and underground services like OnlyFake. The cost of such a fake is alarmingly low. It's around $15. Moreover, AI is becoming both more affordable and more dangerous, as fraudsters are now actively exploiting it. And please, don't take me wrong. I'm a great supporter of AI, and even deepfakes when they are used for non-malicious purposes. I recently created a deepfake video of myself presenting in French, a language I do not speak. The video was very convincing, as it not only translated what I said, it also made it sound grammatically correct in French and adjusted the movement of my mouth and facial muscles to match what was being said. My wife and 2 kids all speak French, so I tried to play a trick on them, saying that I had now learned French and showed them the video. They were very impressed, but knowing the industry that I'm in raised obvious suspicions, and the pronunciation was far too native sounding for someone that just learned the language. This said, the positive business applications of something like this are tremendous, not to mention the entertainment benefits. Creating a deepfake is now much easier than in the past. However, the key to creating convincing deepfakes requires significant gathering of information. Fraudsters often gather publicly available information about their targets to prepare an attack. Social media platforms, where people frequently post photos and videos, are a common source. For example, in an attempted scam involving Mark Reed, CEO of WPP, the world's largest advertising company, fraudsters used his publicly available images and deepfake technology. They created a fake WhatsApp account and set up a Microsoft Teams meeting between Reed and another senior WPP executive. During the meeting, they used the cloned voice of Reed and footage from YouTube to trick an agency leader into setting up a new business, providing funds and sharing personal details. Although the scam was convincing, it ultimately failed. However, Reed later urged the company's leadership to verify identities, even in meetings that appeared completely legitimate. Although the crypto industry has been relatively calm in the face of deepfake threats, it remains one of the sectors fraudsters exploit when fabricating deepfakes. Sometimes it casts a shadow over their reputation as a fair and fully compliant industry. One major recent case involved the Singaporean Prime Minister, Lee Hsien Loong. In a video manipulated with deepfake technology, based on a real interview with the Chinese news network CGTN, the PM appeared to promote a cryptocurrency scheme, falsely guaranteeing returns on investment. The problem is that many people can't distinguish between altered and real video images. This makes it easy to manipulate public opinion online, turning deepfakes into a powerful weapon for unfair competition and political disinformation campaigns. By the way, disinformation campaigns are also one of the deepfake-related risks reported by businesses. As just mentioned, crypto companies are an out-of-the-box case. On one hand, crypto businesses report significant financial losses, starting from $500,000 for most respondents. They also face high legal expenses as a result of deepfake fraud. On the other hand, despite being actively targeted by deepfake fraud, only a quarter of respondents see it as a significant problem. Quite an interesting conundrum. Businesses around the world are hit by deepfakes literally every second. Organizations are trying to enforce their strategies to mitigate this risk. This is especially crucial in identity verification processes, since it has become common practice that the majority, if not all, of the interactions with customers are happening online. Companies are actively trying to protect businesses, their employees, and customers from any impersonation threats. Let's talk about the protective measures that are employed by organizations around the world. The weaker the object or verification method you use, the more vulnerable you are to fraud. From form fill-in to liveness checks, it's up to you to decide how to best protect your business. In order to tackle the increasing sophistication of fraud methods, businesses are implementing a wide array of measures to combat threats. Multi-factor authentication, facial recognition, and somewhat surprisingly, fingerprint scanning are the three most common techniques adopted by more than half of all businesses. I think the share of MFA will be growing, since it is common sense to increase the security level by combining two or more methods of user and/or customer authorization. It is clear the most effective way to detect and prevent identity fraud is not by adopting any one measure. It's by combining different measures. According to our survey, the vast majority of organizations believe that it is the combination of identity verification methods that is the most effective way to tackle new threats. On average, there are 2 to 3 measures in place to mitigate the risk associated with deepfakes. 93% of businesses believe the combination of biometric verification and online document verification is the most reliable solution. And this is the top choice. This is reasonable, as it is much harder for a fraudster to tamper with both document and facial image. Individually, biometric verification was considered the most effective method by 64% of organizations. Here's one of our customer stories. The challenge for this customer was that the core part of their services required the KYC process. For this purpose, they were seeking a reliable IDV solution. They required wide support of foreign IDs, as their customers came from every corner of the world. They were also interested in reducing onboarding costs, since the number of their customers was growing significantly. To achieve the required results, they partnered with us at Regula to implement a single vendor comprehensive IDV solution covering document and biometric verification. The set of Regula Document Reader SDK and Regula Face SDK fully met their requirements and allowed them to build a robust identity verification system with a liveness-centric approach. I will talk in more detail about this approach in a few slides. The result: they significantly improved their KYC processes and fraud protection, improved document verification and biometric liveness checks, enhanced user experience and trust, and did all of this while creating a 50% reduction in the cost per customer for onboarding. A pretty great result, even if I do say so myself. Recently, Gartner put together the critical insights for deepfake detection. They concluded that biometric verification and liveness detection mechanisms have become crucial to subvert deepfake attacks. Just in the last few weeks, Meta announced that it is now testing new ways to combat scams and help restore access to compromised accounts. They're now using video selfies as a means for people to verify their identity and regain access to compromised accounts. The user will upload a video selfie, and they'll use facial recognition technology to compare the selfie to the profile pictures on the account they're trying to access. This is similar to identity verification tools you might already use to unlock your phone or access other apps. On average, there are 2 to 3 measures in place to mitigate risks associated with deepfakes, the top being biometric facial recognition verification. Financial services predominantly rely on facial recognition and multi-factor authentication methods, with 66% and 65% of respondents choosing these options respectively. Also, more than half of all organizations choose to verify documents with liveness detection features. In general, financial services seem to be more prepared as these organizations are more inclined compared to others to employ all possible defense methods. No surprise here. They are, in essence, on the front line of the anti-fraud battle. Now, let's see how businesses view the strength of their defenses against deepfakes. Organizations that have already experienced identity fraud are more likely to implement measures to combat the risks of deepfakes. Typically, these companies take digital document verification with liveness detection much more seriously. But even with all the variety of protective measures employed, nearly half of all businesses report that they aren't very confident in their ability to detect deepfakes for their organization. Doesn't that sound quite concerning? However, confidence levels rise for those who adopted an online ID verification solution earlier. In fact, by over 20% for those who adopted the solution 7 years ago versus those who adopted it more recently. While businesses around the globe are adopting a variety of methods to defend against deepfakes, these measures are only the beginning. In the era of sophisticated AI-generated fraud, the "please provide a photo of your ID" approach no longer works. Deepfakes are now often impeccable, and humans and even technologies may not be able to detect them. So it's strongly advised to switch to a new approach, which we at Regula call liveness-centric verification. This approach is focused on dealing with physical objects only, both faces and documents, and their dynamic parameters. No scans, no photos, only real documents and real people in real time. Organizations must ensure that they are verifying a real person, therefore they should enable liveness checks for both ID and their face. The crucial thing in this approach is to really deal with a physical object, not a substituted screen. Here we have a tip. It would be best to request for customers to use their mobile phones during liveness sessions instead of a computer's webcam. This is because it is generally much more difficult for fraudsters to swap images or videos when using a mobile phone's camera. As the results of our survey underline, one method of identity verification is not enough. It should be a multi-layered approach. It's not only about combining various IDV technologies. With lifelike deepfakes, one should dig deeper and analyze user behavior to spot any abnormalities that may raise suspicion. This includes paying attention to the device used to access the service, as well as its location, interaction history, and any other factors that can verify the authenticity of the identity. Technology is moving faster than ever and has become more available than ever to everyone. Fraudsters are always evolving, finding new and innovative ways to attack. This is why all of us should be ready to adapt. And to sum up, the threat posed by deepfakes cannot be disregarded. It is constantly changing and already having an impact on a number of businesses worldwide, particularly the financial sector. The most important lesson is that no one solution can completely remove the hazards. Our defenses must advance along with the sophistication of scammers. We must have an all-encompassing approach that incorporates several security tiers, each of which supports the other. In the end, companies that integrate various solutions into a cohesive overall solution will be the ones most equipped to handle these new dangers. On this note, I'm ready to answer any questions that we may have. Let's have a look. Are there any new breakthroughs in making detection tools more effective? Well, that's an interesting question. We actually use, just as our fraudsters use AI to try and fraud us, we're actually using AI in reverse to try and detect potential fraud. So there is a lot of work that's going on, and it's a bit of an arms race between fraudsters and companies like us who are trying to detect fraud. And it is an AI battle where both sides are using AI and machine learning technology to try and make improvements on our side, detection, and on their side, making it more realistic. So that is something that we are working on extensively, and every day we're creating much better capabilities to detect deepfakes. Next one, do you have any models dealing with biometric signatures during liveness tests? That is something that we are discussing. For biometric signatures. At this stage, we do not do biometric signature recognition, but it is something that is being looked into at the moment. Next one, do you think blockchain can help to protect from deepfakes? That's a good question. Look, blockchain is an interesting technology, and yes, it may have a role to play in protection from deepfakes, especially if every image created that is original was somewhere on the blockchain, and you could look it up and get proof that it is an original image or original video or any type of digital content. So yes, there is a role that blockchain can play, and it could be a very effective role. The challenge is that the amount of processing and electricity and everything else around the deepfake, around the blockchain technology that will be required to actually make this happen could be quite a challenge. Next one, looking at the facial liveness pattern, will deepfakes be capable of mimicking the head angle? Look, as I mentioned, deepfakes and the AI technology behind deepfakes is getting better and better. And yes, they are starting to mimic all sorts of actions. So it is, at least on our side, we're looking for every little minute detail that doesn't look right. And that's the only way that we can currently battle this. So yes, they are starting to mimic all sorts of different things that we're looking for. And that's why we're constantly looking for more and more different ways to identify deepfakes. This question, how do Regula know the stat of deepfakes across industries? Well, as I mentioned from the start, we've done 2 surveys, one in 2022 and another in 2024, across multiple industries with decision makers within those industries. And that's where all of this data that I presented today was actually from. Next one, how can organizations ensure that their IDV solutions remain effective as deepfake technology continues to evolve? This is actually a very good question. And the only way, I guess, that I can suggest is by having close relationship with a trusted IDV solution provider, hopefully us, and we will keep you updated on all of the new innovations and changes and things that you should be on the lookout for, because we see ourselves as not only a provider of technology, but also a trusted partner that can assist in your IDV solution approach. Okay, this one. How can we verify the impersonation docs if it's deepfake? Well, the way that we look at documents is, and when I talked about liveness-centric, there are holograms. There are many different things that we look on to determine if the document is actually authentic. And if we're doing a liveness-centric document verification, we have pretty good chances of being able to identify it being a real document or a fake document. So once again, it goes back to that liveness-centric approach and us identifying many of the security features on the document, including holograms and other security features that we know how to look for. Next question is pretty much the same. There are AI-generated ID documents available in the internet. Any insights on how to deal with them in terms of capturing them? As I mentioned, liveness-centric is the key. So if you use liveness-centric technology and look for those security features to make sure that they are real and authentic documents, that's the way to make sure that you're capturing all of the potential deepfakes and AI-generated documents. What ethical considerations should be taken into account when developing AI-driven IDV solutions to prevent deepfakes? I don't think I understand this question, so I'll move on. Maybe I'll have a deeper read into it and we'll answer it in a document later on. Got a lot of questions today. Besides human face liveness check, do Regula have liveness check for document as well? Yes, as I mentioned, we do liveness checks for both biometric and document. So a big key to what we offer is liveness for documents, liveness checks. Which countries can you validate the document ID? Well, we can validate IDs for pretty much every country in the world. We've got a database of over 13,000 documents that we work with, and it's the broadest and deepest database in the industry. So if it's not in our database, then it's probably not in most others. And one of the ways that we actually pride ourselves is our team is constantly adding new IDs to the database. And if any of our customers worldwide come across a particular ID that's not included in our technology, we add it very, very quickly. Do we release any course note for this training? For this presentation is recorded and it will be made available. We do run courses and training for identity verification, but it is more for forensic identity verification, usually for law enforcement. So depending on the industry that you're in, we do have specialist forensic scientists that do deliver training courses on how to identify forensically fake documents. That's an interesting question. Is deepfake legal? Well, that's something that all of the countries are currently trying to legislate. The technology is there. It's there to be used. And many countries are currently in the process of making decisions on the regulations around deepfakes and artificial intelligence technology in general. This is a very insightful question. In my opinion, any neuromuscular processes in execution is an effective tool in identifying deepfakes. It is very difficult, if not impossible, to simulate a live neuromuscular process. Your comment. Look, there are many different physiological ways to detect deepfakes. There's also there's a number of different ways, and we've looked at a number of different ways, and neuromuscular processes could certainly be one of the ways. I don't believe that this is currently being used, but certainly I don't believe that it's used by us. But every different, process is currently being evaluated and looked into. It's a matter of trying to include, as I mentioned, as many different ways of identifying deepfakes in order to prevent them, because they are getting better and better. This question: what are the proper software that will be convenient with digital forensic labs? Well, at Regula, we are actually a manufacturer of digital, of forensic equipment, and software that works with that forensic equipment. So if you like, one of our sales team can be in touch with you and provide you a full information on all of the forensic hardware and software that we're able to assist with. Should issuers of IDs embed a public-private key verification system in IDs they issue? Would that reduce the problem of deepfakes? Yes. The simple answer is yes, and the other simple answer is that is where it's all heading. Digital IDs with embedded chips do have public-private keys for verification, and we do support those. And it is much more difficult to fake for those types of IDs, because you do have the information on the chip, as well as the visual information, as well as the MRZ information. So yes, much more difficult to fake, but not impossible. So yes, it's all headed that way. Most issuing authorities are looking at embedding digital chips into IDs, but as we all know, these processes, especially globally, can take a very long time, and there's a very long tail of IDs, and that conversion process would take 5 to 10 years, as most passports are valid for 5 to 10 years, at least in most jurisdictions. And there's a question: are you open to collaboration with other companies for deepfake detection solutions? We usually build everything in-house, and not usually, we do build everything in-house. That said, that's not something that I get involved in. Our technical team decide what types of solutions they use. So it would be a matter of speaking to someone within our technology development team, but we do all of our development in-house. On that note, I think there's no more questions, so we will wrap up. Thank you for attending. It's been an absolute pleasure delivering this webinar, and I hope it has been useful to you. And it's all up to us, all of us, to continue fighting against deepfakes and fraud in general. So thank you very much, and we will hopefully see you at one of our next presentations. Thank you.